evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Chris and Mark back on Monday asking the same question we ask every Monday. What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on, Mark. The fucking aliens have landed and the Americans have scared them off by shooting at the bastards. How are you, mate? You all right?
I've seen that movie. It does not end well.
Somebody get Will Smith on the blower sharpish because we are in desperate need. As long as they don't blow anybody up until after the cup final. And if Manchester United win, just blow them up first. And then we can lift the trophy a little bit and celebrate before they blow us up as well. So hopefully the world will not be attacked by aliens. But God knows, the way the world's been going the last couple of years, it's just a natural development, I suppose, mate. But we're going to talk about all things Newcastle United. And we are, as I mentioned there, as we always mention at the start of every episode, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. We'd love you to come and join us. We're on 2,500 subscribers now, which is brilliant. Thank you so much to everybody who's done that. We're absolutely amazed at the amount of followers and subscribers we've had in the short time we've been going. Loads of room for you guys, though, so smash the button. Plenty of room, like we say. Great community here. Loads of good chat in there, not just from us chatting on the mic, but also the guys in the comments as well. And we are live again tonight, as always. Jump in the comments. I think we've already got a comment in there from BT, who's been in the house early doors. Good to see you, BT. And we're going to get stuck on. And we've got Les in the house as well. The boys are raring to go. Same as well. I say we're raring to go. Mark is hanging on by a thread as he's dying from man flu. So if he suddenly sounds like he's about to kill Neve Campbell and scream, or the kind of guy that you would block on the phone, don't worry. He's not trying some kind of new raspy-tone to get more subscribers. He's just dying. And I am also dying of some weird illness myself, but thankfully, my voice hasn't been affected. Some of you may disagree, but I'm going to try my best to soldier on, as is Mark. But let's get stuck in there, Mark. So obviously, we titled this episode Cherry Bombed because it sounded quite catchy, to be fair. But it wasn't a great game at the weekend, obviously, as everybody's aware. We went down to the Vitality Stadium. Great position for us to create a massive gap between us and Spurs. Spurs got battered by Leicester, thanks to James Maddison, hopefully black and white shirt next season. Manchester United held to a draw by Leeds midweek. So it was all set up for Newcastle United, Mark, wasn't it, to really go out there, get a good victory and create a gap. And it just didn't quite work, mate, did it? We weren't quite at the races, were we?
No, I think it was one of those. I think we all expected Newcastle to get back on, back into winning ways, get a good result to kind of kickstart this half of the season again, because it's been a bit slow really so far, sort of since the Leicester game. So it's sort of disappointing, I think, a way to sort of watch the way that the game panned out, because it just never really got started at all. There was no real flow to the game either way. Lots of mistakes, lots of misplaced passes. It was just another disappointment as well, especially when we you consider how sort of positive everybody was going into it, thinking, well, I know you shouldn't sort of say any game's going to be easy, but you want a game like that to kind of try and kickstart your fight into this top four.
Yeah, I mean, look at some of the stats. We kind of covered a little bit with the player ratings video that we did, but 67% possession for us, 15 shots versus their 11, 7 on target for us, 5 for them, 5 off target for both teams. We had 6 corners to their 4, 3 big chances to their 2. For a team that was kind of second bottom in the league, we didn't particularly look like we were the dominant side. I mean, we're going to cover this in a minute, but obviously one of the big changes was Alexander Isak starting up top because Wilson was missing yet again, which we'll cover in a minute. And I was disappointed with Isak. I think I said that. I was disappointed that I didn't see more from him. I know he's a bit rusty. I know he's looking for a run of games. He's been very stop-start in his Newcastle career. I do not agree with Kieran Dyer yet again. My God, taking punditry to a new level of shitness in the studio when he said there's only been one dodgy signing, Alexander Isak, he said. The guy's got 3 and 5. You fucking melt. I mean, Sky Sports, do yourselves a favour. Just go to the boozer and get just some random fucking bloke to come in and talk about Newcastle, because he'll do a better job than Kieran Dyer. What a wanker. So going back to the game, Like I say, Isak he lacked a bit of that sharpness. And I just felt there was the very rare occasion we played the ball into him in those key positions. I think there was one in the first half, wasn't there, where kind of in the keeper, and you thought if Isak rounds that keeper and slots it in the back of the net, or he puts it between his legs, and he just kind of fluffed his lines a little bit, didn't he? But the lads weren't getting the ball. They weren't getting the ball enough at all. As Mark's cat is ruining his house in the background. Just don't worry, Mark. Will Smith is here. Thank God, Will. You are here to save the day from the
Hey,
aliens.
you put the call out. You put the call out.
Will, I'm so glad, Will. I'm so glad you're in the comments. Please save us from the aliens, especially after the cup final. But yeah, it's. I just think it was looking at that. If you looked at Newcastle United for the first time that season, you wouldn't have thought we were where we were in the league, would you? With the way we played, everybody seemed to be off mark, didn't they? Every single one of them seemed to be off.
It's such a strange thing, but again, you look and go, well, you haven't lost again, and it's 17 now unbeaten.
Yeah, the run continues,
and you get to the only team that has beaten you this season in Liverpool this weekend. But yeah, if you look at the way that game went, you wouldn't say that was a top four team. Equally, though, you go back to, you mentioned Spurs before. I mean, Spurs didn't look like a side that was capable of challenging for the top four against Leicester. Man U didn't against Leeds for a lot of that game too. So I think everybody's just fallen. I've used a phrase a few times this season. Everybody's sort of fallen over themselves. I think this kind of represents the absolute best opportunity for Newcastle to get into the top four, probably over the next couple of years.
Yeah,
I just think that you're going to have. I sort of base this on my belief that Liverpool will pick up from next season. I think Chelsea will get better as those players bed in. Spurs can only get better. Man U are getting there under Ten Hag. So this sort of gives the opportunity to get in before those teams right themselves. But it's just a, I don't know. We talk about the kind of the downturn in form, and I think we're going to come on to it, isn't it? The squad depth and things that's really having an effect on the way that certainly the last couple of games have gone with a lack of Bruno. It's just utterly frustrating to watch and think, well, these games where you're still creating chances, just not good chances now, and that is really frustrating to sort of see, especially when you consider the number and quality chances that you were creating up to the World Cup break, and even in that Leicester game, or for some of that Leicester game.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get stuck into that squad thinness in a minute, mate. Definitely, and maybe some of the missed opportunities and maybe how they address it in the summer. I think looking at the game, if we just kind of wrap the game up, I suppose in a neat little pile of shit that it was. It's another shit goal, really, another poor goal from a set piece. Burns all over the place. I think with a flick on header, Isak loses his man. Trippier doesn't know which man he's marking. The guy, again, it's that same back post, Mark, isn't it? For a defence that's been so tight, that same back post, the guy is clear, he puts the ball away. Really, really poor from the lads. And, it's not something that my worry is, and again, I'm not trying to be negative, because yes, we are unbeaten, and we've had a massive, hammer hit to the squad, especially missing Bruno. Bruno's definitely our best player. There's no doubt about that. Anybody who doubts that Bruno Guimaraes is our best player is just look at what's happened since he's not been in the team, and it tells you for certain that is the case. But I think it's looking at it. If you give away those chances, Mark, against the kind of teams we're playing next, as Mark's dying there, the teams we're playing next, Liverpool, they've just won tonight in the Merseyside derby. That's going to give them confidence. Obviously, we've got Manchester United in the final. Then we've got City. If we give away sloppy positions like that and don't cover our men like that, set pieces, mate, we could get really battered by somebody, couldn't we?
Yeah, but City have had an off patch as well. They've looked flimsy at times. I guess they went into the game at the weekend as well, on the back of some iffy form, and then started the game well up against a side that just didn't defend set pieces at all well. And they showed they can, they can get into those spaces in the box to win headers right in front of goal. So if Newcastle don't defend well at set pieces, then they could be in a little spot of bother. It's particularly against City. But they've got so much quality throughout that side. If they now hit a patch of form, that could be a worrying one. But the defense overall is solid. It's still sound. There are a few mistakes that have crept in over the last couple of weeks. A couple more from Burn again.
That's a concern for me, that one. Yeah.
But the brilliance in sort of defense of Shaw and Botman is there to be seen, and Nick Pope is still Nick Pope and still pulling off good saves to save their bacon afterwards. So you come into these 3 games, they are going to be tough. You said Liverpool will be on a high now after the Derby win tonight, and that could have been more than what was it in the end, 2-0? It could have been more.
Yeah.
I think Pickford pulled off a couple of good saves. And then the fine, I think as much as they're not going to want to say it, I think a lot of the vision of the players is the final. They don't want to get injured before the final, unfortunately. You've lost Bruno to suspension for a few games, but then it looks like now Willock will be out. Wilson's nursing a hamstring injury. There's doubts over Maxi and Almiron now as well, given that they both went off at the weekend. It's just the lack of a squad is gonna be seriously tested over this next 3 games.
Yeah, we might as well get stuck into that in a second. But just your mate Tom, or Alan Thompson, we love Alan Thompson. He's saying the next 3 games is our season in a nutshell. Liverpool, Man United in the final, and City. He agrees with you, Mark. A massive chance to get into the top 4. It will be harder next year. And Gamer thinks that the form has dropped off since we've been filming this Amazon shite, in his opinion. So you never know. Maybe he's right. It could be a bit of a distraction. But you've touched a little bit on the squad, Creek and Mark. I mean, just to slightly finish on the game, it was good to see Miggy get another goal and get back in the goals because he needed that. But what we didn't need was him getting injured. Now, the injuries are a weird one because obviously Willock gets injured really early on. And I think when Howe was asked after the game, that one seemed to be the worst one. And I agree with you. I think that Willock's out for weeks. I think he'll miss the final, which is, I'm devastated for him because he's been such a huge part of what Newcastle United have done so well this season. And, it's a cup final for the young lad. He's dreamt of playing in those games since he was coming through the Arsenal Academy, chance to lift the trophy. Obviously he'll be there because that's what this squad does. There's a togetherness there. All the players will be there, injured or not, and they'll all get the medals and they'll get a chance to lift the trophy if we win it. But obviously for Willock, he'll be devastated if he's not playing. But you're right, the other 2 probably create more of a problem as well, I think, because Bruno's back for the final and Bruno goes straight into that team. There's no question about that. We're going to look at some stats in a minute, back up exactly why that happens. But Bruno, Joe Linton, and Longstaff, providing they're all fit and not suspended, which maybe we'll cover that in a minute. If all 3 of them are in midfield, that's a solid midfield. We're okay there. But if we haven't got Miggy, and we haven't got Maxi, and we haven't got Wilson, that's a major problem. Anthony Gordon's cup tied. He can't play. So, the squad is massively thin. I mean, the Miggy one and the Maxi one, Howe seem to be a little bit more positive about, Mark. But just on the Maxi one, I still can't see how he gets injured in that challenge. I watched it again and again and again. The guy didn't collide with him. People are saying it was the way he landed. Oh, you've gone on mute, Mark. I can't hear you there. Oh,
there we go. Sorry, yeah. I think it's just the way he's landed. He's just come down funny on his leg, and it doesn't take an awful lot to jolt your knee or jolt that area especially. And I know I think both you and Adam both had a bit of a whinge in the chat.
We did.
But yeah, it just looked like he came down at a slightly off angle, and that's all it takes. But hopefully it is just like I said, hopefully it is just a jar, and nothing more serious for him, because that'd be a huge blow, especially if you if you would have missed one or two of those guys as well, that would just be that'd be a sensational
that'd be
blow.
huge. I mean, you're missing Willock's energy for starters. You're missing Miggy's energy as well in that team. That is a major blow.
Yeah.
So hopefully those two are going to be right. As BT says there, Miggy and Maxi aren't too bad. Yeah, it was Amron got his hands stamped on, didn't he? So he'll probably be all right. I think he was probably going to come off anyway, was Miggy, because Murphy was warming up, stretching that hand of his so he can wave at players, which is about the only impact he actually has these days. But I think, as long as nobody else gets injured or suspended. So let's cover the Joe Linton thing then, Mark, because there seems to be confusion with this. I think you covered this the other day. Maybe just back it up what you were saying, because I've seen a couple of people already say it. So Joe Linton was on 8 yellow cards. He got a yellow card at the weekend against Bournemouth. Some people have been shitting themselves saying if he gets a yellow card against Liverpool, that's him suspended for the final. That is not the case, Mark. Is that right?
Only a red card now would keep him out of the final. If he gets a yellow card against Liverpool, he'll miss the City game and whoever's after that. He would miss 2. So, excuse me. The totting up of yellow cards only applies to Premier League games. A red card would be cross competition.
Right. Okay. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. To coin a phrase, just saying to miss any possible energy off the bench as well. Absolutely. Just reading Man United top goals in the last 15 minutes. Man United have really come into form as well, haven't they? Which is annoying at this particular time. If we were playing the Man United earlier on in the season in the final, you'd fancy our chances. But listen, it's 90 minutes of football, isn't it? And providing that we can keep, I think, the majority of what you would say the 14 of the squad fit, and if you can have Isak fit, and if you can have Wilson fit, Maxi and Miggy fit, Bruno back in that midfield with Joe Linton and Longstaff, that's a decent kind of front midfield and strike department, isn't it, Mark? To go for the final, it's got to be, that's the kind of team I think we're going to have to be looking to try and start. I think. Against Manchester United. I just hope that Isak can get a little bit of that sharpness back. Wilson's a big one. I suppose it kind of ties into the squad as well, mate, about Wilson being out again. This thing with Wilson, you never quite know what's going on with Callum Wilson. Last time we were told he was only going to be out for a couple of weeks. Then he was out for like 6 or 7 weeks, wasn't he? What's your gut feeling on Wilson? Do you think he's going to be fit for Liverpool, or do you think he's going to be out again?
You just panic, don't you? Whenever you hear the fact that it's a hamstring with Wilson, you just think, "Oh God, that's going to end up being longer." But hopefully, we've probably said this 1,000 times before from his point of view, that it's a one-off. It's a game where you can afford him to not be there for. You try and wrap him up a little bit more to keep him fit for the next 3 games. I think that the real positive with this run is that it's just 1 game a week, so you're not having to kind of have him play extra games in midweek for cups or Europe or whatever. You have got that break to be able to do it. So he's had 2 weeks then since his last game to get over whatever little niggle that he's had to go into Liverpool, and if it's not quite right, then you've got another week to get him through the final. So. It is worrying in that regard, but as soon as you hear Wilson and hamstring, that's the fear straight away. That's him out. But hopefully it is just a little one.
As William says, his hamstrings are made of piano wire. I couldn't agree with that anymore, mate. He really is made of glass. I think there's a bigger line problem for Wilson for me. And, we put a little tweet out earlier on, a little bit of a poll as to whether Newcastle fans would take Ivan Toney back in the summer. Now, the reason I did that is apparently Manchester United are interested in Toney. I don't see why Newcastle United couldn't put the hat in the ring as well for that, especially if we have Champions League football potentially. I think we could offer just as much as what Manchester United could offer to the player. Whether he's got a bit of an axe to grind that will let him go or not, you don't know. Obviously, he's got this betting thing hanging over his head, Mark. I saw some of the fans on that thread that we put out there even talking about would they get Mitro back. For me, just to get your take on this, and maybe the guys in the comments as well, feel free to jump in here. Do we need another striker as well as Isak and Wilson in the summer?
Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think now is the point. You just can't run the risk now of getting a full season. You can't chance on getting a full season out of Wilson. And if you are down to one other striking option, it doesn't work. If Isak has a bad run, Wilson's not fit. You don't have anybody else to play. You need somebody to come in. I think that's the intention of looking down the young striker route. They looked at. We'll mention the Ekatike one again, but you go down that route. You go down with a 19, 20-year-old striker that can come in and sort of learn and get better, but give you an option if things aren't going particularly well. That's exactly the route I think that they'll take. They've got two experienced strikers, or one really experienced striker, one that's now played at European level, international level, and into the biggest leagues in the world. And you get somebody to come in and fill in that gap behind those two. But you can't go into another season without another option there. That would, realistically, if you're looking to then push on again, you're going into that almost suicidal in that regard, because you're just asking for problems at that point.
Absolutely. It's a big no from Roger for the return of Mitro. Come on, Roger, even after he wound up the Sunderland fans, he deserves a contract just for that alone, mate. That was absolutely superb, that. But I do agree with what William's saying, and that was kind of my thinking as well, that if neither Wilson or Isak step up, I think we'll go for, he said, a number one striker, especially if we're going for Europe, Champions League. I trust neither playing the Champions League. I'm not sure I trust neither of them, because I think certainly Isak's got experience playing in that competition prior. I do get what you're saying, William. I think that there will be some players as well out there. I mean, we talked about, was it Vlahovic on rumour has it as well. Juventus are really in the shit money wise. Obviously, the return of the ESL is on the horizon, which I think we'll get stuck into on Wednesday yet again to get the rant machine fired up. But Juventus are definitely in the shit money wise. I think they would entertain offers for him. Now, you put him in the mix to this squad, he does have a really good chance of sticking his chest out and saying, no, I'm the main man here, I'm the striker here, I'm the goal scorer. And then you end up having almost back to when we had Tino, Ferdinand, and Shearer. If you remember, it was always difficult because people would say either three of those could have started in a two, couldn't, is what people were saying.
Yeah.
And it was Tino that got sacrificed the most, wasn't it? He either played, he'd come on the left hand side, or he'd play in a hole behind the front two. If Beardsley was having a quiet game or something like that. So we could end up in a similar scenario to back in those days. But if we haven't got enough strikers now, Mark, to cover the Premier League, the Carabao Cup, and the FA Cup, you throw in either the Champions League or Europa next season, as well as all those other competitions. There's no way in God's green earth we've got enough strikers to deal with that, especially when Callum Wilson's our number 9. I love the guy to bits. I think he's a brilliant centre forward, a great professional, a great character, but he is getting older and he's getting more niggly injuries now, isn't he? To be honest with you, the best thing and the worst thing that happened to Callum Wilson this year was the World Cup, in my opinion. I think that threw him off his stride, and I think that's knocked him back in terms of his fitness. Or do you think that was always going to happen with Callum, and I'm just using the World Cup as an excuse, mate? What do you think?
See, I thought it would be absolutely ideal for him to get that break, to not play any games in that period, not to have any risk of him breaking down. He's gone with England. He's had his little bit of football. He's trained, but it's not worked for him. He's come back poorly. And I think that's the problem. When had he come back fit, had he come back in the same level of fitness as he left, then I think he hits the ground running. But I just think he's taken so long to get back on anywhere near his normal sharpness. That's been the problem. And in the end, the World Cup break's absolutely not worked for him. Where we thought it would. We genuinely thought it would be ideal for him, of everybody, because of his injury issues, to get that month and a half effectively out of proper football. It might have done him some good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at Callum's stats quickly there in terms of what he's got. See Alan's point there about the 4 strikers of Manchester United. I mean, they were exceptional. When he had Cole, York, Sheringham, and Solskjaer, was 4 of the best centre forwards you could see. You could rotate any one of them and they get goals. If you could end up with 4 like that, you'd be laughing your head off. Maybe it is hard to keep them happy, certainly in the modern game. But so far this season, Callum has played 16 Premier League games. He's got 7 goals and 3 assists, and 4 Carabao Cup games and no goals, according to this. So he's got 20 appearances and 7 goals all in all. So that's very heavily weighted, isn't it, Mark, to the start of the season, pre-World Cup, when he was on that run. Didn't he get 6 or something? Possibly 6. Might have been before the World Cup, maybe. Was it 5 or 6 goals he got?
He got a couple against Villa, didn't he?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who else he picked up against, but certainly he was very heavily weighted in the early part of the season. 3 in his first 4. One against
City,
Spurs, 2
Forest.
against Villa.
Yeah,
and then there's that huge gap then right the way through until the West
8
Ham
games
game.
and no goals. Yeah, wasn't it? That was him. That was him right the way through. I like your style, William. Yeah, I'd love those 2 players in Newcastle. I think they'd be great squad additions. Absolutely, 100%. Roger likes the idea of the old 4-4-2, Alan. I mean, actually, going on to that, Mark, we talked a little bit about this, didn't we, in terms of the injuries, and we might as well address this a little bit. We'll talk about it more on Wednesday with the rest of the guys, but with the lack of players potentially missing for the Liverpool game now, Maxi or Miggy might be rested or might not be fit. Obviously, Willock's going to be out. If Wilson, well, hopefully Wilson's fit. Let's just play on the fact that Wilson might be fit. You mentioned, is there a bit of a change of formation potentially because we haven't got the players available to play the normal system?
Yeah, I think very much it leans on them going to almost what I think probably they finished with at the weekend was just 4-2-3-1. Because you're not going to have another central midfielder available unless you bring Anderson in. I think the likelihood is that you start with that 2 of Joe Linton and Longstaff in midfield, and you play 3 in ahead, and that's going to be Maxi, Gordon, Miggy, or Isak in as one of those 3 with Wilson ahead, or if Wilson's on the bench, then Isak ahead of those 3. And they're a little bit more interchangeable at that point. I'd probably lean towards Gordon down the left, Miggy down the right, and ASM through the middle. So I think ASM just gives you a little bit better option through the middle than he's looked out wide. He certainly looked better when he came central. At the weekend, there was a little bit more out of him. But again, it's going to depend on whether his injury just keeps him out a little bit longer. I guess not. I think the indications are hopefully that those 2 in terms of him and Miggy will be fit. But and then I think Wilson, you've got to play cautiously. I don't think you can, if there's any doubt at all, and we know Eddie won't. If there's any sort of doubt, he's not going to be in the squad for Liverpool. But I think you definitely look at this game and go, well, you're looking at a you're looking at a 4-2-3-1 because it's just I don't think there's really another option.
Yeah, I like to quote a phrase as optimism there. I can see 5 shite subs for the last half an hour. Lewis, Fraser, Murphy, and Richie.
Fills you with confidence, doesn't it? That one.
Absolutely frightening. And Roger says that obviously Howe tried Gordon as a number 10, and he wasn't particularly good enough there in terms of that position. It's funny with Gordon because we've seen flashes. We've seen flashes happen. I mean, he had a good little cameo against West Ham. He did all right, I thought, against Bournemouth. That chance that he can't, you say he fluffed the chance. It kind of comes to him a bit fast, and the defender does well to get his body in the way, I think. So I can't really be too harsh on that.
Is that the one that came back off? It was Sean first, wasn't it? That Sean got in, and I just noticed.
It's my turn.
I don't know what's going on.
I was going to chuck it out. I was going to chuck it out in a minute, but not physically chuck it out. Don't RSPCA me, everybody. I do like my cats. It was fast asleep there. So I just thought I'd leave her. But she is black and white, so give her some juice there. But yeah, so obviously Sean Longstaff goes through, shoots, hits the keeper, and then it comes back to Gordon. And to be fair to him, he's in the position to get in the position, and I quite like what I've seen about him so far in terms of he's in those positions. But he just kind of stabs a toe at it. I think the defender does quite well put him off, to be fair. But yeah, I don't think, if I'm honest with you, out of the two players who got injured, I think I can see Miggy back in the side. I don't think Miggy will have a problem. But knowing Maxi and the fact that he wears more bandages than fucking Mum Ra, the ever living, from when we watched Thundercats as a kid, I think there's more chance that Maxi will miss the game, or say he's only fit enough for the bench or something. So I think a front three. Don't zoom at the cat. I'd never zoom at the cat. I'd probably miss anyway. William, know my kicking. But I think for me, I'd be quite happy with Isak, Wilson, and Miggy as a front three. I think that would be extremely dangerous. And I think the way Liverpool have been playing, leaving spaces at the back the way they have, I think that could be a really promising front three. But we'll have to just wait and see kind of what Eddie Howe has on the cards. In terms of what he's got to play with, to be fair. But yeah, it's Tokoyan is saying there that Gordon should be able to play the Willock role. Do you think Gordon's disciplined enough for that? Because he can lose his head a little bit. Do you think he'd be disciplined enough in that midfield?
He can play the more forward Willock role. I don't think he can play a more central role.
No,
I think he is a little bit too rash.
Give away free kicks.
I just think he's much better option further forward. I think if Liverpool play with that high line that they like to do, it's certainly because you want pace forward, and the pace of if you've got it from Isak, from Gordon, from Maxi, and from Miggy, if you can get in behind, then that's going to be the perfect option. You don't want to. I'm not sure you want to hamper Gordon by bringing him into that central midfield, but I think he will just get bullied off the ball and start to lose his temper a little bit. And he's got that in him. We've seen that. We saw that against Newcastle, didn't we, when he was playing for Everton? He's got that little bit of needle about him. But if the Liverpool midfielders get in and around him, that could tip him over. If you keep him wide, keep him running in behind the defenders, especially trying to push Trent back. We know Trent's not the greatest defender in the world, and he could give him serious headaches.
Yeah, he could. I mean, I think that the biggest thing that we're all missing, and everybody knows that we are missing it, is Bruno in that midfield, and it's massively hampered the way we play, hasn't it, Mark? I mean, you got some of your clever little slides there you wanted to pull up to indicate as to how much it's changed the way we've played. I mean, there's been some stats kicking around. We've got a slide as well about with Bruno, without Bruno, but just the way we're playing is interesting. You were pulling this up before. If you want to share that, mate, just so we can have a little look at it.
Yeah, so I picked this up. There's a lad on Twitter that I picked up called Mark Stats, and I've got to give him credit for this because it's something I couldn't do, and it just gave an indication of sort of the way that Newcastle have played, sort of with Bruno and without. And you can see in that first sort of game on the left hand side, you can see the Bournemouth and Newcastle sort of passing networks, how much every sort of ball is going to one of the wide players, whether that's going to Burn, going to Trippier, and then going on forwards. There's nothing from that central hub of Longstaff and Joe Linton into the forward players. It's very much going to the side or going to the two fullbacks. Contrast that with the Leicester game, and you've got everything that flows through Bruno. We know the other two aren't as good. Everything's backwards and forwards through Bruno. It's not just going to the fullbacks; it's going to the wide players. It's going to the forwards, and I think that's the real difference that we've seen. Certainly, the last two is that there isn't that ability to play it from that central midfield area to the forward players as quickly. And it's very much going to, in the main, going through Trippier because the bulk of the balls are going down the right hand side. Again, you look pre World Cup, the Chelsea game again, that hub in the middle of Bruno going wide to Miggy was a key one. And then obviously as it says in the key at the bottom, the arrow brightness reflects a number of passes between the players. So coming back from Miggy to Bruno, again, the Southampton game, backwards and forwards through Bruno to everybody. It's not just confined, as in that first one, not just confined from that hub in the middle to the two fullbacks. And the same story again against Spurs and against Villa. Everything flows backwards and forwards through that main man in the middle, and his disappearance of the last couple of games because of his red card. You massively miss that ability to be able to move the ball quickly and move the ball forward. And it is a clear indication of, it's just a clear indication of exactly what he missed.
Absolutely. And just, you've got a slide as well, just for the stats that's doing the rounds on Bruno, mate, haven't you, in terms of his influence? It's been all over social media. I mean, you can see that there, kind of games with Bruno and games without, and the difference there, the wins. I mean, the win ratio is the one that stands out the most, the points per game, the goals per game as well. I mean, his influence is gigantic. So the question I probably have, Mark, and not to be too much of a negative twat here, is did the club miss an opportunity here not to get at least cover in
Yes.
for that position in January transfer window? I keep going back to Youri Tielemans. I keep going back to it. I know everyone keeps talking about the wages. You wanted 200 grand a week. You wanted this, you wanted that. But you would have saved a fortune on a transfer fee. Youri Tielemans could have stepped in and done that role while Bruno was injured. Or I know Maddison would have cost you big money, right? But Maddison could have stepped in and done that job. Look what he did against Spurs. He ripped Spurs to pieces, Maddison, the other day. So why didn't the club do something about this?
I sort of understand the Gordon transfer in that it allows you to keep Willock, Joelinton, Longstaff, Bruno as a four for the midfield three, and if one's out, I don't think they ever. I'm maybe short-sighted in this again, but
Bruno plays on the edge. Bruno plays on the edge. He's one of them players, man. Like Wayne Rooney was the same. Steven Gerrard was the same. They always play on the edge. There's always an element that they might just lose their head a little bit and get a suspension.
I don't think, and I saw this comment on another channel, that the club have done one on Eddie Howe. I saw earlier on saying they've really, they've
agree with that.
They've done the dirty on him by not agreeing or not signing a central midfielder.
I don't agree with that.
I think the deals that they wanted to do in that area weren't the right ones, and they would. I think the amount of money that it would have brought in to maybe bring in a Tielemans in terms of wages is far above what Newcastle are at a level now.
And they're worried about the domino effect. I understand that.
And this is part of the problem. So if you're going to bring somebody in, then it has to be for the right amount of money. I think the one that I regret, and I said this last week, and it's allowing Shelvey to go.
As Ducoin says there, his cross was fantastic when he come on for Forest. I saw the Forest fans on Twitter getting really excited about what he could bring. He looked in really good shape, but I still think that the way we play has evolved beyond Shelvey's game. But we could do with Shelvey right now. There's no doubt about that in my mind, especially with Bruno missing. Shelvey just to get on the ball, slow things down, pick the passes, pick the runners. I think if John Joe played the last couple of games, I think, I'm not saying we would have won them, but I think we would have seen a bit more at the midfield, I think, than what we have been seeing.
Yeah, I think let's go back to one of those slides again. When you look at the kind of positioning of it, just quickly, if you look at where Bruno is in the middle, if you stick Shelvey in the middle in one of those, excuse me, then you start to see Longstaff and Joelinton getting further forward. Look at the Chelsea game, for example. You've got that's almost that triangle of the three. You then contrast that with the Bournemouth game again. You haven't got that triangle of that midfield three. It doesn't exist, and that's the way that Newcastle have been so productive in that area, because everything's flowed through him. Now, if you put Shelvey in there and you allow the other two to move further forward, it then allows the progressive passes, the passes forward towards the opposition goal rather than the side to side. It opens up the opposition because it allows you to play the ball forward much more quickly. And no, he's not the right type of player overall. But I just think a player like that now would have just allowed you to play a much more controlled game against Bournemouth and would probably against Liverpool as well. He's not perfect, and he's not the future. But God, you could have done with him the last couple of games, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, Ian's made a really valid point there as well. That whatever happens from now to the end of the season, we're in a final.
Yeah,
We've had an immense season, Ian. You're totally right, mate. And we're not trying to be too doom and gloom. I just think that it feels like, I suppose, going on to the last section we're going to talk about, which is the chance to finish in the top four and get back to that Champions League, which opens up a whole new avenue of revenue and nice at St James's Park and players you can entice to the club. If we finish in the top four, we are nearly 3 to 5 years ahead of this plan, no doubt about that. And the owners would never have thought we'd have got here this quick. As much as Amanda Staveley was saying we're going to win the league in 5 years, we've definitely jumped there. It's way quicker than anyone would have thought. But just before we move on to that, Mark, there's one player we spoke a little bit about before we come on live here. There's a massive opportunity here for Elliot Anderson now to grab his opportunity with both hands. Joe Wilk being out probably for weeks. He's got a good chance of trying to force his way into this team in terms of even in the final. Elliot Anderson, I mean, you would never have thought that when he was on loan at Bristol Rovers and he had a great season and he come back. You would never have thought we would have been reliant so much on this young lad doing something in this squad. The question I've got, I'm probably going to put you on the spot a little bit here. Is he good enough? Is he good enough to take that chance? Coyne is saying he's putting faith in Anderson adjusting his game. A risk, I know, but it may come to that. Do you think Anderson is good enough to step up and have an impact in this team with these players missing?
I've questioned it. Certainly, I think what you've got out of him so far when he's played hasn't been nearly what you'd hope for. And I think we said at the beginning of the season, I think you hoped that he would grab every opportunity that he had to cement a place in that squad. So it's a tough one, isn't it? Because I think he does have the ability to do it. I think it's confidence with him. I think he
just needs that first goal, doesn't he? Or that first assist or something just to kick him in. Yeah,
absolutely. I think something like that just to break the shackles on him almost a little bit, give him that freedom just to play his natural game. He almost looks a little bit at times he's playing within himself because he doesn't want to make a mistake. And then you make a mistake and you almost backtrack even further. He's definitely got the ability. It may just be a thing like that and just have a chance and go, Joe, we need to see how the lad will do. Put him in the midfield where he's busy. Depending on who Liverpool play, I guess. If you've got that age in midfield, if he can start to run rings round the likes of Henderson and Fabinho and etc., then that might give him that little bit of confidence to play that that higher level team. I know they've been rubbish so far this season, but just give him that boost of confidence. So even coming to the final, if his place, he's then knocking on the door. Probably not going to start, but he's certainly looking at first option off the bench, maybe.
Yeah, I'd say so. Maybe that impact player that you're hoping to do something, certainly in the final, can change it. I think with the Liverpool midfield, they've got the young lad, haven't they? I mean, I'm just looking at his name here, seeing how to pronounce it. You're better at this than me. Number 43, is it Stefan? Is it Bakatic? Is it Bakatic or?
This is a lad that they've just started, isn't it?
Yeah, but he's played a few games now. He's very, very controlled in that midfield. Very, very controlled. Very good on the ball. Great positional sense. Good passer. I think it'd be a big test for him in the weekend because he's going to have Joe Linton rattling right through him. So that's a big test for any young lad in the midfield because Joe Linton's a fucking monster.
He's Ian's point, good, to be fair to him. So I mean, he's got ability on the ball, but it's a different prospect when you've got a 6 foot odd Brazilian
monster,
Dorman,
Terminator. Yeah, a Brazilian who's been sent back in time to take John Connor out. That's pretty much what he looks like, doesn't it? To be fair, but Ian's saying obviously about Anderson. We mostly played him in the second 11 through. Was it? I think starting. Yeah, he'll come good. I would say so, mate. I would say so. So to coin a phrase, saying it's mental to think that the last Liverpool game, Anderson, Fraser, Isak, no Wilson, no Bruno, bizarrely could be similar again. I know it just goes to show you we haven't really improved the depth of the squad. Certainly that winter window. I wouldn't say we fell asleep because Ashby's a good cover for Trippier long term. I think Gordon is a good signing. I think he will add to the squad. But I mean, I think to be fair to the club, I think the club were trying to get Conor Gallagher. I really, really believe that. I think they were trying to get Conor Gallagher. I actually think Conor Gallagher might have been interested in the move himself, but he was priced out of the move by Chelsea. And they didn't want to sell to a rival anyway, did the mark. And weirdly enough, a move to Newcastle would have been really good for Conor Gallagher and good for us because he would have given us that energy in midfield. And then obviously if Willock goes off injured, there's your ready-made replacement, but just didn't happen, did it? And it's left us a little bit short. But going back to Anderson just before we finish in the top four, young players have these opportunities, don't they? And sometimes they grab them. I'm not saying Anderson's as good as these guys, but your Rooneys, your Gerrards, your Lampards, your Joe Coles, these kind of players. Obviously, they were something very, very special. But Anderson, for whatever has happened, fate has fell his way, and he's never going to get a better opportunity to make himself a Newcastle, starting 11 player than he's got right now, is he?
No, you're right. Even when Bruno's back, I think he then, if Willock is out a little bit longer term, he's got the opportunity to play that role and be that player that comes into that midfield three. Then to either play with or alongside the others, or be that first option off the bench just to give you something a little bit different. He has to grab that opportunity now, and if he's given it, I really hope he does, because that's what you want. That I think there's another message in there from coin a phrase as well. 3 Geordies playing in a final. What a moment that would be.
Oh, but if you can't get pumped up for that, I mean, Longstaff was already saying, he's been telling the rest of the lads what it would be if you win a trophy for this club, what you'd be a legend in the city. And Elliot Anderson will know that, growing up a local lad as well. He'll know that. And what better way to etch yourself into Newcastle history, no matter what happens in your career. Obviously Matty Longstaff burst on the scene with an unbelievable strike, but because it was a league game, it might be forgotten about in years to come. If Elliot Anderson was to score the winner in the final, no matter what happens in Newcastle career, he will always be a legend. No doubt about it whatsoever.
Yeah, he's never buying a beer again in his life.
No, mate, absolutely no doubt about that at all. But we'll see what happens. But I suppose just to finish up, Mark, obviously the biggest opportunity or the best opportunity for the top four, you mentioned before about teams kind of falling over themselves. So these are our fixtures, I suppose, just closing off the season. So we've got Liverpool next. The Brighton game is postponed, so that'll come back another time. Cup final, we're not counting because we're talking about Premier League. We've got City, and then after that, we've got Wolves and Forest. So we've got Wolves at St James's, Forest away, then Man United at St James's. Brentford away is a hard game. Villa away will still be a difficult game. Spurs at home, Everton away. That'll be a massive one for Anthony Gordon. Southampton at home, Arsenal at home, Leeds away, Leicester at home, then Chelsea away. Realistically, that's a pretty tough running, isn't it, towards the back end of the season compared to some of our other top four competition?
I think the frustrating thing with that is that you look at them maybe as the points that have been dropped recently, and you go,
"That's what they cost?"
Yeah. You look at the Leeds game, the Palace game, and the Bournemouth game. If there's an extra 6 points on there, are you going to pick up those 6 points? From some of the teams you might go into games thinking, well, we might just get a draw from. There's definitely points on the table during that run. The way that Newcastle played, the lack of defeats, the way that the defense has played, it's always going to give you the chance to win games. And I think the form will come back. It's looked rocky in terms of the attacking form, and the lack of goals is a bit of a concern. When you go from that Leicester game, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 goals since Leicester, and that's in 10, 11 games. So that is a little bit of a concern, but the chances are still being made. they're still getting into the forward areas. So you'd like to think that starts to flip and sort of even itself out over the rest of the season. So, but that run, I think that run now, you've got, so is it Liverpool, Man City, Wolves, Forest, Man U, and then there's a run of about 4 games in that next gap where you go, all right, we want maximum points from that.
Absolutely, and you want to target that, yeah.
So it sort of fits and starts, and then the back end of the season, you've got to play. You're going to have Southampton, who at that point might be dead and buried, an Everton team that is going to be scrapping for their lives, Arsenal scrapping for the title, Leeds scrapping for their lives, Leicester probably going to be in the around mid-table at that point. So that might just be a sign-off one against them, and then Chelsea, depending on how they're actually doing towards the end of the season. So is not an easy one. It's cliche to say that no game in the Premier League is easy, but there's definitely points in there. If they just find a little bit more form again, and it's come back in that confidence word. If they can just pick themselves up a little bit, tell you what, a cup final win will do that for them.
Oh, 100%. I mean, when you get that attacking threat back up and firing, really. But I mean, obviously, looking at the top 4 at the minute, I mean, Manchester United and ourselves are in the top 4. Spurs are the ones creeping up behind us. I mean, looking at Spurs' fixtures, I won't concentrate too much on Man United because I think Man United probably will finish top 4, whether we're alongside them or not. I think they will do. But, Spurs have got some big games there. They've got West Ham in the weekend and they've got Chelsea after that. They've got Champions League thrown in the mix. Towards the back end of the season, after us, they've got Newcastle at St James's, then they've got Manchester United at Spurs, and they've got Liverpool and Anfield. So they're 3 tough games back to back for Spurs. So it could choke them up a little bit there. Then they've got Brentford as well coming in between Villa and Leeds. So it's not a plain sailor for Spurs either, mate, is it? It's going to be, and Spurs are very Spursy. They have a habit of chucking stuff away, don't they? As we always say. So, you want to hope maybe that Spurs fall off or slip up and maybe the Champions League catches them out, or if they get an injury to Kane or Son or something. I know, is it Bendercup's already injured, isn't he?
Bendercup's out for the rest of the season.
Bendercup's injured. Yeah, that's a massive blow for them because he's a huge player for them in that defensive midfield role. So yeah, I think for me, I think it's definitely Spurs. I mean, William thinks Brighton are one to watch. I don't think Brighton will have enough to break into the top 4 personally, but I know that they're doing well. But I think they're a little bit too far behind. So I'm keeping my eye on Spurs really.
Yeah, I mean, when was the last time Brighton lost? I think the last time Brighton lost a game was New Year's Eve. They're in some serious form. They've scored some goals recently as well. I know some of that's been in the cup. But they've had 2 results against Liverpool. They've thrashed Everton as well.
They've got 2 games in hand as well, haven't they? Spurs. They're 4 points behind and 2 games in hand. So
I wouldn't discount them just a minute because they've got like Newcastle. They've got a damn good team about them. Their team is greater than the sum of their parts at the moment. A little bit like Newcastle. I think Newcastle are still working on this team ethic where some of the players aren't at that level, but the performance from everybody has been at that level. So I think Brighton are certainly doing that. And they're doing really well, and they've got some exciting players. And that Matoma is a fantastic footballer. I think a lot of
where did it find these players, man? Is it Dan Ashworth? Where did it find these players?
Well, this is it, isn't it? Where you go, do we start to see some of that coming to Newcastle's route? Yeah.
Well, fingers crossed, mate. But it certainly will be an exciting end to the season. I'd be a bit disappointed if we've been in the top 4 for as long as we have and we drop out, But as Ian said before, Christ, I think we'll all take that cup win and a top 6 finish for a season. Absolutely, no doubt about that.
I think this is it. It's that realistic view, isn't it, of going at the start of the season. If somebody had said, "We'll finish," for your team, whoever your team was, but for Newcastle's purpose in this regard. You get to a cup final and finish top 8 after the last few years, or the last 14, 15 years of Newcastle's existence, you'd snap their hands off for it. The ride that this has been, yes, it's going to be utterly disappointing that if you drop out of the top four, but it's a stepping stone. It's progress, and it's huge progress on where you were this time just over a year ago. And let's not forget, exactly, just over a year ago, you were still sitting in that bottom four, bottom three, probably bottom, having gone through that run of games in December where we said at the time, if there wasn't the pickup in performance, that could have spelt real trouble. Then January came round and it just went crazy. So
absolutely,
it's just a little bit of realism, and that's exactly a BT point. If you can pick up points when you're not playing well, that's the key to maintaining position and just staying in the fight. If you turn a couple of those points into defeats, a little bit more of the confidence ebbs away. The teams around you start to catch up a little bit more, and it becomes a lot more difficult.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see what's going to kick on in the next few weeks, but hopefully we'll get back to winning ways and find what goal touch again. But that's us all pretty much wrapped up for what's going on this week. Thank you so much to everybody in the comments. It really helps the episode flow. We hope you've enjoyed it. And as I mentioned at the start, if you're just checking us out for the first time, please feel free to click that subscribe button. We're over 2,500 subscribers now, but loads of room for you if you want to jump on to live shows like the one you've just watched and some pop-up videos as well through the week. Me and Mark will hopefully be back on Wednesday if Mark's voice still stays with him to talk about all things Newcastle. We've got a few topics to go through on the Wednesday as well. Certainly one in particular about Dan Burn at left back. Is it time to call that a day? That'll be one to have a conversation about on Wednesday. So make sure you come and check it out, guys. Smash the likes, as BT has just said. Thanks, BT. You keep me right there. Hit the like button. It really helps. It really helps the video get around YouTube. We'll be looking forward to seeing you back on Wednesday. Me and Mark are off to get our suits measured. The Sam Smith one. Mark's got the helium tank, and I've got the bin bags. So we'll catch you on Wednesday, lads. Have a good one. Keep it evermore. And we'll see you later. Cheers.